This is Lebanon. Thank you so much for joining us today. You are here risking your safety and you're giving us your time to talk about the Kafala system today, otherwise known as the Lebanese, or let's say the Arab world's modern day slavery. So before we get into the juicy stories, I would like to know a little bit about This is Lebanon, how it was created, and what your mission is and what you hope to do for the future.
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for interviewing me. I feel very privileged.
Thank you so much for giving me your time. This is great.
We need to get these stories out. We need people to know. So this is really important to us.
Thank
So
you.
our page was founded by Dipendra Upreti, who lives in Canada. And he was a migrant worker himself in Lebanon for about 16 years. And he met his Nepali wife there as well in Lebanon. And they love the country. So, and everyone on our team loves Lebanon and is working actually for a better Lebanon. We think Lebanon can do better and deserves better than this system. Yeah. So Dipendra volunteered for the Nepali consulate when he was in Lebanon. And while he was in that role, he oversaw the repatriation of more than 40 domestic worker corpses back to Nepal.
Oh my God.
And only one person was ever charged for murder, and that was a Syrian man. So no Lebanese were charged for any of those murders. And Dipendra said that if he ever made it to the West, he would do something to help the domestic workers that he had seen suffer there. And he was true to his promise, because many migrant workers, when they make it to Canada or other countries, they just become obsessed by getting the biggest house and the big car and, or kind of migrant worker goals, right?
Yeah.
Dipendra was never like that. He's done really well for himself, but he's always been about domestic workers. It's his obsession. He lives really to help these women, even now that he's in Canada. So he, with the help of others, birthed This is Lebanon. It was founded in 2017.
Okay.
And it was just a Facebook page, nothing more. And it was launched with the idea of bringing these stories out of the darkness into the light. And no one had any bigger goal than that. It was just like, let's just tell some stories. Because he figured that if more people knew, then it must bring change. But there was no more goal than just telling stories. But what we found is that almost immediately it became the hotline for domestic workers. So we were getting almost from day one, actually, inundated by people asking for help. So we never planned it, but we did become the hotline for domestic workers. And to date, I just checked now to see what our latest incoming message is. And it's 14,700 cases or unique individuals that have contacted us. So, of course, they're not all domestic workers. Like you contacted us. Yeah. So one of those was you. But, aside from a few journalists, we've been contacted by 14,700 people.
Wow.
So it's a lot. Yeah.
So how rampant it is in Lebanon. This is an insane number. I'm shocked.
Yeah. I mean, we're basically just a small group of activists sitting on our couches doing the entire job of the Ministry of Labor. Like, imagine if we have been able, we've been able to achieve such incredible results. Imagine if the Ministry of Labor in Lebanon actually did its job. What kind of change could they bring in?
It's insane how we rely on so many NGOs to do the government's work, but it's just like it's never enough because at the end of the day, these NGOs are run by, exactly what you said, volunteers and people sitting on their couches in like their 2-hour break or their 2-hour free time to do this.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Really kudos to you guys.
We've had some real, maybe we can cover it later, but just to say now, we've had some really incredible successes. Like the biggest payout was for a Filipino woman who had been enslaved for 21 years. and her employers, we heard, were connected to Nabehbiri. So they only spent the employer only spent 3 days in prison before he was released, and there was some secret deal done for a major payout. We know how much it was, but we won't say how much on air. But 21 years, no contact with her family, and no salary. 21 years. It's just, these crimes are heinous, actually. I'm currently personally handling 3 cases of women who haven't been paid for more than a decade. Oh, so we're not talking about, we're talking about major crimes here. We're talking about slavery.
This is, it's funny because we never, like me right now, as I live in the West, we never think about these things. We never think about, oh, do we still have this type of enslavement going on somewhere in the world? It's not even a passing thought, but to think that this is the reality that is rampant in the Arab world is beyond me. And it's just to show like how corrupted the government also is, that they're willing to cover up, basically human slavery and murder. I mean,
the government is part of the problem. This is state-sponsored slavery. Let's be really clear about that. If they had any will to fix this problem, they could fix it. They could just put one of these slaveholders in prison, and it would send us a clear signal to the general population that this is not accepted. But they don't, and they have impunity, and they use it. They know it, and they use it.
This is such a shame, honestly. And we will get to these stories in a little bit. But I know that This is Lebanon is also involved, as you mentioned, in the you became the hotline for migrant workers in the region and in the country specifically, but you're also involved in the daily issues that they struggle with in Lebanon. And I want us to talk about this a little bit more. Can you give us a little bit of a brief overview on what the Kafala system and how the Kafala system limits the freedoms of migrant workers?
I think most of your listeners probably have jobs, right? They're young people and they're working. And they would probably agree it is a basic human right that if they're not happy in their job, if the boss is abusive, if they're not getting paid, for example, they can choose to leave. Bye-bye, see you never. Right? It's just you don't think that you...
Bye.
Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah. But if you're a domestic worker, you can't just leave. Because of the substantial fees paid to the agent, most employers feel that they have bought the worker. In fact, when they're not consciously filtering their language, that is the exact word they use when they're talking to our negotiators and their language is not guarded. They say, "Shtareta, I bought her." So, yeah, there is a 3-month trial period. And during that period, the employer and the worker can decide not to proceed with the contract. So both can walk away. And in practice, it's much harder for the worker to leave. But there is that, in theory, that opportunity. But workers often report to us that the employers change towards them once that trial period is over. They know it's a trial period, and that once the contract is signed, she's got no way to leave. And, about 95%, and this is documented, of employers confiscate the passport, which is it's an international crime that goes unchallenged in Lebanon. But there are very limited circumstances which justify the worker leaving. For example, if she hasn't been paid for 3 or more months, or is being physically or sexually abused. But I don't think there are probably many of your listeners who would keep working without salary for 3 months. Would you? Would you keep working without salary for 3 months?
Of course not. And especially if my salary is not paid, I'm pretty sure that I'm being also disrespected on a daily basis. And this is my start. I mean, I feel like just by virtue of knowing that someone has the ability to take my papers away, meaning like their ability to take my freedom away and my passport with my cue to leave, this would be like my first red flag, and I would just be scared right in this, I would just be in this state starting this second.
That's right. Yeah. So many workers contact us and say, my madam hasn't paid me for 2 months, and we say, look, we're really sorry, we can't help with that, because the contract states that you can't, you're deemed to breach the contract if you leave, unless you haven't been paid for 3 months. And then they can leave for sexual abuse. But how do you prove that? You're locked in quite often behind closed doors. So we often ask workers if they can secretly video abuse without putting themselves in danger. I mean, we emphasize, do not put yourselves in any danger. But we have received some very sobering video evidence, and some of that we've posted on our page, of attempted rapes and groping, and most of the perpetrators are grandfathers. It's so disgusting. So we've got a few of those videos on our page. And we've also documented several cases of physical abuse. Last week, actually, we did a post where we put the pictures of Marta, an Ethiopian worker, who had been burned with a hot iron by her madam on her forehead and neck just before she was sent home. And she was sent home without the 3 years' salary that she was owed. And the madam was so angry about our negotiations. It took us 10 months to get them to finally agree to send her home. And they burned her with this hot iron and sent her home without her salary. And we contacted the Minister of Labour about that, actually, because the employers are from the same village as him, from the same extended family, from the, Beit Baydam. And we haven't had any reply. So if the Minister of Labour can't assist a worker who is from, lived in the same village as him, working for the same extended family, how's he going to help anyone else? We're quite interested to know the answer to that. And that those same employers, we had already posted about them previously, because the worker before Marta was a Kenyan woman who wrote to us and said she had escaped. She'd run away at 3 o'clock in the morning through forest to avoid the roads at night. And because her employer, Qasim Baydam, had come to her in his boxes while she was doing her dishes in the kitchen and pressed himself up against her. And that was the second time he'd done something like that. So, and that they were also physically abusive as well. So she was like, the madam's own family advised that girl to escape. So that, this Marta, the one that was burnt, was the second victim in that family. And we are really worried that they have a new girl in the house. And that's what we've asked the Minister of Labour to investigate that, but we haven't had any reply. So
I understand how people
what's to stop someone else?
It's not a concept for me that how people with precedents for abuse are just allowed to just continue and just keep employing people.
Now his response on Twitter, I think it was, or someone from his office, not him personally, said that those employers had now been blacklisted. But it doesn't matter, because they hadn't documented Marta anyway. She wasn't even under their name. And they can get a new worker in exactly the same way as they got Marta. So it's, that doesn't really work. So what can I say about the limitation of freedom, as like you asked? Basically, being a domestic worker in Lebanon is a 2-year prison sentence. That's what the women tell us. And I thought I'd just read out for your listeners some of the things that workers have said to us when they've written into us, just to give them a feel for how these women feel, right? Yes. This woman says, if I knew that Lebanon was like this, I would not come. I swear by God Almighty, I didn't know. Nobody informed me. They treat us like animals. There is no day off. When this month finishes, I will have spent 1 year, 10 months. I have not had a day of rest, which is not good. When you fall sick, they don't care. I am not happy, not happy, not happy. I came here for my children. This next person writing to us says, I'm tired of the suffering. Even sometimes I just feel like killing myself to end it all. I came to this country to find a better life for me and my family, not knowing that I will suffer so much. And then I'll just read one more. This person says, she always calls me animal. Where an animal like me came from. Am an ugly donkey, am like a dog. Also wanted to beat me, just for nothing. Am just tired and really going through hard times here. So tell you about freedoms. There are no freedoms. These women are serving 2-year prison sentences, and it's hard. It's really hard.
This is really hard to hear, because at the end of the day, like I'm not sure if, our viewers or listeners can, associate potentially like this message with, a person with a family, with kids, with a mother, a father, a daughter, a done, like she's like humans, and it's chilling, it's like it's chilling. But then again, I remind myself about the jungle that is Lebanon, and all of the other types of violence that are also happening against minorities, especially also women, just in general. And it sometimes it makes me feel really helpless because it's just truly terrible.
Stephanie, it takes a village to enslave these women. It takes a village. Do you think that all of those people visiting the Bayram house had no idea what was going on? What would happen if one of the guests had just said quietly to her in the kitchen, everything okay? You're getting your salary? It takes a village for this to happen. It takes people to close their eyes. They consider these women to be like private property, and it's like machason, this is private, I can't get involved. So that's why I say it takes a village.
Yeah, this immediately just makes it proper, like just makes her proper, like it's just, yeah. And anyone, this, what they say, that if you see something wrong and you don't speak up about it, you're complicit in every single way, shape, or form. So that is like bottom line here, what we're talking about. So if I want to go through like some of the cases, you're talking about and how you receive all these messages, can you potentially like walk me through your procedures and like how you onboard a case and like how you go through it?
Yeah, sure. So we have various ways that women can contact us. They can contact us through our social media platforms. We're on Insta, Facebook, and Twitter. Or they can send us an email, or they can contact us via WhatsApp or Telegram. So there are different ways that people contact us. 50% of our cases come from the victims, and 50% come through informants. Unfortunately, very few of those informants are Lebanese. Like probably a handful, actually, like literally a handful of cases have been reported to us by Lebanese. We're hoping that will change, and that's why partly why we're talking to you. Because if more Lebanese are aware of a way that they can help, that they can approach us, and that we will protect their anonymity, then we're hoping that we will hear from more Lebanese. So our procedures are extremely thorough. We speak with employers, with agents, with employers' neighbors. We call employers' workplaces. We investigate with the worker herself, obviously, her family, the sending agent. So we're talking to all of the parties involved. And we have a bilingual team, a multilingual team. So we're able to talk to the families in their own languages, which is obviously very, very necessary. And we do all we can to gather all the information, to study a case objectively and strategically. We don't ever take a case just at face value. So there's a lot of investigating that goes on behind the scenes. And then we contact the employer, and it's at the start to build rapport. We want to find out, we always want to hear the other side of the story. We know that there can be another side, and we're not just believing the domestic worker. So we contact the employer and we say, we tell them that we've been informed of this case. We want to hear their opinion. We ask to see receipts because it's a contractual obligation that they keep receipts. And yeah, we do our homework. we if a case ever makes it to our page, there's been months and months of work gone on behind the scenes, behind every case. And it's important for people to understand that our goal is not to post. Yeah. If we post, we have failed. We've failed to get that worker her salary, despite, you know, all of our efforts. So many of our cases, no one ever hears about, because the employers have decided that they don't want to be exposed on social media, and they've paid the worker and sent her home. Yeah.
It's all about
getting harder.
Part of it, right? This is everything about, just as long as no one knows our dirty secrets, we'll do whatever.
Yeah, and we do tell them, you know, when it gets to the final stage and they're not being cooperative, that we will boost the post to every Arabic speaker within a 10-kilometer radius of their house. And it works. The jungle drums work. Like usually within half an hour of posting, we'll get a text message from someone who's seen it and corroborates what we're saying.
Oh my God. And can you give us examples of some of the cases or some of the basically abuses that we see in the cases that you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So the main one is non-payment of salary. And actually, we've found that women who go home who have been physically abused recover a lot quicker than women who go home without their salaries. It's one of the main reasons for suicide when they get home, is the non-payment of salary. We had one case, a Nepali woman called Sonam, who was unpaid for 10 years. And we were just in Nepal, actually. I was in Nepal myself 3 months ago. And we found out that Sonam committed suicide in 2020. And there's a direct line between her suicide and the non-payment of her salary. It was during COVID. She couldn't, the family hadn't, you know, were finding it difficult to eat. And the shame of returning home unpaid just caused her to take her own life. So, yeah. So I'll give you some stats. Yes. I'll bore your listeners with some stats.
We love numbers.
This is for the numbers people.
Yep.
In the last year, we've received 165 cases who reported being owed cumulatively $300,000. So when you think that a domestic worker gets paid $150 a month on average, you know, or 200, that's long-term non-payment. So 165 cases in the last year. And through our negotiation process, we managed to secure $66,000. So that means we helped recover about 27 years of unpaid salaries for migrant domestic workers. But you can see from those figures, we've got a long way to go. It's getting harder and harder to get these women paid. Like before the crash, if I was negotiating a case, more often than not, it would be successful. You know, I was sending women home regularly with and seeing them getting paid $10,000 or more of unpaid salary. But those stories now are becoming a lot rarer. It's getting harder and harder to get these women their salaries. So that's a non-payment. The physical abuse, we started keeping stats in 2018. So this is not since we started, but we've received 463 cases of physical abuse. And sexual abuse, 205 reported cases. But this is the tip of the iceberg, right? You know, this is
this is the only, you know, the ones that actually had the ability to come and let you know. But what about, you know, all of the other people that can't even get to you or don't may potentially know the hotline like yours
that don't even know about it. Yeah.
My God.
And I'll tell you a little bit about the employers, shall I? That we've done some profiling on employers. So we've done the data, and we've found, for example, that 35 cases of these abusive employers owned their own businesses. And a dozen cases were of employers that worked for the government as an army official or a government employee.
I mean,
And we've also
things I don't
we
know,
have a
honestly.
sorry.
That if that doesn't explain things, I don't know what does.
Yeah, really. And then actually one of the main occupations we found of these abusive employers are doctors and dentists and lawyers. I don't know why, but in Lebanon they seem to think that they're gods and they're beyond the law. So they feature quite prominently among the abusive employers. And we've even had some employers that work for NGOs. We had even a case where the employer worked for the UN. So that was a lot easier to get that worker her salary. But yeah, across the board.
I mean, talk about people who wanting to save the community or make an impact on the community. A UN representative, a doctor, a lawyer, a security officer. Wow, just stand up, people. Love it. And
then I can tell you a little bit about the location of where they are as well. And if we find that, for example, an employer is in Ashrafia, we feel a sense of relief because it's going to be easier to negotiate than someone where the employer lives in Baalbek or the Bakar, because these are just lawless areas and they don't care. I mean, we even contacted Noah Zaita, however you say it, who's the drug baron of Lebanon. And he didn't care. He was just like post, he doesn't care about his reputation. So often these employers in those areas in particular feel empowered by the lawlessness. One employer even said, we've got it on record, we've recorded it and it's on our website as well, that she can shoot her worker in the living room and no one will notice. So these are we're talking about family names like Zata and Jafar, and these cases are really difficult to negotiate.
I mean, these people essentially control the areas that they live in. Even the army is barely able to handle them. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. When a worker contacts us and says she's in Baalbek, our heart drops.
I mean, understandably. So, starting with some of the cases that you have worked on, in 2017, there was a slight problematic case that came onto your hands about a migrant worker in the name of Halima. And it was problematic because her employers were actually big names in the country, I believe. Can you give us a little bit more insight on this case?
Oh my gosh, I would love to tell you about this case. I mean, I actually handled this case personally, and I visited Halima in the jungle in the Philippines when she got back home. So this is not just a case to me. So Halima was she's Filipino, and she left behind 3 young daughters to go to Lebanon. The youngest one was only 2 years old when she left. So she basically lost her mother during her whole childhood. She was in Lebanon for 10 years. And in the first month after she arrived, she got paid and she called her husband. All good in the first month. And then that was the last phone call she ever made. He never heard from her again, never got another payment. And she was working for a woman called Ibtisam Saadeh, who is an advocate for women's rights, apparently, according to magazine covers that we've seen. Lebanese woman, obviously. Filipino woman aren't women, apparently. And she's very active in political circles. So her Facebook profile has pictures of her with heads of all the political parties and heads of the church. Very well-known woman. And so Halima's husband, bless him, for 10 years got on his little motorcycle, and no phone, no reception in the jungle where he lived. Rode half an hour to another village where he could call Ibtisam Saadeh to try to speak to his wife. And every time, he did this every week. Can you imagine? Every week for a year he did this. And every time she would say, Halima is out, or hold the line, Halima's coming. And he would wait until his phone card ran out. and then get on his motorbike and go back to his village again. And many told him to give up, that Halima is surely dead, but he never gave up hope. It's an astounding story, actually.
Oh my God. I I don't even want to comment. Like, this is the worst part when it comes to people who have, let's say, places of authority or places of power or know people in the government. It's like, I don't know. How can you be a women's rights defender and do this, not just to a woman, but just to a human being in general? And again, we're gonna go back to saying that pretty sure a lot of the people around her recognize the abuse and see the abuse as well, and also don't speak out. So even in her own environment.
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit more about Ibtisam Saadeh. So Halima was one of our very first cases, actually. We just started the page and we only had 5,000 followers back then, which seems unbelievable now. Now we're up to nearly 150,000. So followers are equal power, and we didn't have much back in those days. Yeah. But Halima's husband had contacted us, and so we posted these little videos from him and his children on our page, and they held up signs saying, Ibtisam Saadeh, where is our mother? And Ibtisam and her adult son, Ala, they responded by posting their own pictures, supposedly of Halima out shopping, getting her hair done, whining and dining, and generally having the time of her life. They even posted a video, and we're used to these now. It was the first one of this genre, but now we realize that it is a thing. They posted a video of them all coming in with a cake with Halima written on it, clapping and singing her happy birthday. So, I mean, it was wonderful theater. It was fabulous, but of course, none of it was true. And eventually, despite these little happy videos that they posted, they succumbed to the pressure and they sent her home wearing just her flip-flops, going home in her flip-flops. And when Halima packed her bags before she left, Ibtisam packed her bags before Halima left. And when Halima got to Manila, she got her bag out and she opened it, and it was full of used sanitary pads. Yeah, this woman is unbelievable. They had remarkably paid her $5,000 before she left. That was her payment for 10 years of slavery. And then myself and a friend flew to visit her in the Philippines, and we recorded her testimony. After she got home, we learned that there was an Ethiopian that worked for Muhammad, who is another of Ibtisam's son, who's part of Hezbollah, and she had died trying to escape. So Halima actually saw her on the concrete outside the building dead. And 2 other Filipino workers contacted us as well after we posted the story, and they had also worked for Ibtisam. One of them had escaped by jumping onto the balcony of the adjoining building. Can you believe it?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, some of the buildings are close together, but she really took a risk there. But she flew to the adjoining building, and that's how she got away. And another one said that she managed to leave the day that Ibtisam and her family were moving house, and the packers were inside the house. And she managed to get out the front door. And one person contacted us using a fake profile and said that she was a relative of Ibtisam's, and she knew from one of the workers that Ibtisam had forced the worker to drink her urine. So we're talking about really depraved behavior here. Halima told us also that after we posted, the family, she heard by this stage she understood some Arabic, not a lot, because they intentionally hadn't taught her, but she understood enough to understand that when they were sitting around the kitchen table, they were discussing whether to take her over into Syria and kill her or not. Yeah.
What the actual fuck?
Some of these stories, that's why we want to tell these stories. We want Lebanese to know. We want to bring them out. We want to bring them out of the darkness. No one knew about these things before we started our page.
I just don't understand the motive. Like, why go to these lengths? Like, to that, like, what did she do? You know what I mean? It's like the sheer like monstrosity in these people is that I don't understand what kind of pain or like whatever this person inflicted on them for them to do these things. Like, to send her with a bag full of like used sanitary pads. First of all, what? Like, this is just beyond, like, not even just like like, it's disgusting. It just shows like how trash people can be. Oh my God. And can you maybe like explain to us some of like the limitations that you experienced as a result of the existing legal procedures, or let's say the lack thereof of these legal procedures?
Yeah, well, a human rights organization, lawyers, filed a case against Ibtisam in 2017. And last year, the courts found in Halima's favor, but then Ibtisam appealed. And to this day, Halima hasn't received a penny of her unpaid, salary. It's actually difficult for even the average Lebanese citizen, right, to obtain justice in the judiciary system. So if those responsible for the Beirut blast cannot be held accountable, how is a migrant domestic worker supposed to get justice?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say before, is because, I mean, they already, blew up the entire, almost half of the cities, and they got away scot-free. So, do you know how much they still owe her money? Or like the sum?
They owe her 10 years salary, less $5,000. I mean, in any other judicial system in a country that had a self-respecting judiciary, Ibtisam would be behind bars and made to sell her house to
Pay off.
I've seen Halima and her family are living. They're living in basically a tree house that doesn't have walls. And this is a woman who went to Lebanon to lift her family out of poverty. It's just unbelievable that Ibtisam is still walking around free, carrying out her normal life as if nothing happened. And Halima and her family are living in a treehouse.
Still being the person or the woman who's defending other women, right? She still does she still have, her normal status and does the same things that she does before?
No, I don't think so. I think she's keeping her head low now.
Man, with reason. So there was another case as well that I want to talk about in 2021. And this one was involving a migrant worker in the name of Miseret. Am I pronouncing it right? And it was actually the first criminal case that was brought to a Lebanese court by a domestic migrant worker, really just against her former employer specifically. But can you tell us a little bit more about it and your involvement, as this is Lebanon?
Yep, sure. Misrat was enslaved by Dr. May Saade. She's a dentist. And she's the mother of Ghadi Bashara, who is a name that maybe some of your listeners will know. He's a well-known singer, and his YouTube videos, some of them have had more than 7 million likes.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, he's the voice. He was the voice of Lebanon, and he was raised by a slave. And May Saade's oldest daughter studied in the United States. So we're talking about a family that has money, right? You don't put your child into a private college in the US if you don't have substantial financial resources.
Yeah, we're talking about minimum 100K worth tuition a year, maybe, almost, at this case.
No, it's up there, yeah.
Yeah.
So they have money, and that is a common thread in many of our cases. Doctors and lawyers are the worst abusers. So often people choose to enslave their domestic worker, not because they can't pay, but because they know that the Kafala system grants them complete impunity and they can get away with it, right? Who in Lebanon is going to hold them responsible?
No one.
So that's what Dr. Saadi did. She kept Meseret locked up for 8 years. And when I say locked up, I mean locked up. She wasn't even allowed to see the neighbors. She was denied contact with the outside world. And Meseret told us once she got home that every day Dr. Saad called her shadmuta. Yeah, that means bitch or prostitute, or my black slave. This is daily verbal abuse, and she was her black slave, to be honest. And then 3 years into her captivity, Meseret thought she had the perfect opportunity to escape. The Dr. Saadi was taking her to the consulate to renew her passport. And so Meseret told the consulate staff in Amharic, her own language, what was happening and asked them to help her. But a diplomat there told her, we can't help you. You have a contract. You need to return with her now.
Are you kidding me?
I mean, no, I'm not kidding. The Ethiopian consulate, we could do a whole podcast on them. I mean, they stole the, I won't even go into that. You can cut that bit out. And then years later, I think it was 2018, I believe, Meseret's family contacted our page, the family in Ethiopia. So we went through our processes. We contacted Dr. Saadeh. And then a few days later, and I'm talking literal days, Meseret was on a plane to Ethiopia with $50. And that was her payment for almost 9 years of hell.
$50.
Yeah.
How was it possible for you to bring this case to court versus, the other cases potentially?
Yeah, at that time we were referring cases to an organization called Legal Action Worldwide, and they brought a lawsuit against Dr. Saadeh. The first hearing was in October 2021, and she failed to appear in the court. And what are we now? It's June 23, so almost 2 years later, and still no outcome, which I'm sure won't surprise your Lebanese audience.
But what does this leave for, future cases or,
Absolutely nothing, unless the courts decide to hold her accountable, which, we're not holding our breath for.
The worst part of it all is that this specific family, not just because they had money, but then we can say that this was an educated family, This was someone who had an international following. If you're telling me 6-7 million people listen to the music, they're educated in the West with the notions of, human rights. And at least, I don't know, at least in the last few years, we saw like the Black Lives Matters movement. And I don't know, I would just, oh man. Because sometimes, a lot of people just think, oh, maybe it's because people are not educated enough, and that this is why.
That's a common misconception.
It's like purpose, it's intentional, it's completely intentional. Now, in the last few years, just to go back to this, Lebanon's been through hell, and it's been a very, very difficult place to live since 2019 in the economic crisis. So how did the crumbling economy and basically socio-political situation and everything else going on in Lebanon amplify the abuse against migrant workers?
So salaries were always low for domestic workers in Lebanon, but now they're even lower. Currently, there are only 2 countries still openly sending women to Lebanon. All the other countries have put bans on their women going to Lebanon. Those countries are Kenya and Sierra Leone. So the Kenyan women often write to us saying they were promised, before they left, that they would get $250 a month. But after they arrived, they were only being paid $200 or even $150. So there's a lot of deceit in what they're told. And then the Sierra Leoneans are promised $200, and when they arrive, they find that it's $150 or sometimes even as little as $100 a month. So they're coming to Lebanon having been told a bunch of lies.
So this is where, I kind of want to question who's responsible for this? Is it? I guess, okay, maybe a better way to frame this. How do women or migrant workers sign up for the kafala system? Because I'm thinking here that it's a double, maybe do they have like offices based in Sierra Leone, let's say, or Kenya that actually help with the process? Or
Yeah, there are networks of recruiting agencies in the sending countries, and they have partnerships with the recruiting agents in Lebanon. So they work
they know
together.
what's going on then. So the problem also starts with them. I'm pretty sure like they get maybe a big load of money for them to just.
Yeah, sure. Everyone in the gravy, everyone's benefiting from this gravy train, except the workers themselves. The Lebanese government are doing really well out of it. There were studies that show that, just the millions and millions of dollars that the Lebanese government makes off this kafala system. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's just because this is the first time I think about it. I'm like, okay, if they're coming from there, then something there is also complicit in these, in all of the procedures. So and it's just, wow, it's baffling for me. And I guess I also want to touch on, with the economic situation, we did see a lot of migrant workers being dropped off at the embassies because employers couldn't afford, to give them their salaries anymore. And this also, a lot of it happened apparently a bit during COVID. And we saw them literally sleeping on the streets. Can you tell me a little bit more about, some of these experiences?
Yeah, sure. I think most people saw the pictures of the domestic workers being dumped, either on the street or in front of their embassies, like there were bags of garbage being thrown out. Though all those pictures went viral in the media. But what people don't see or didn't see is the women who are still inside the houses working for nothing now. So many times when our negotiators contact the employers about non-payment, they say, and we've heard this so many times, well, at least I didn't throw her out on the street like others did. So they actually, I think they justify it to themselves, because they must, right? There must be an inner dialogue. They justify the slavery by saying at least they are giving her food and a roof over her head, like she didn't have a house and food in her own country. So yeah, that's the untold story.
It's like, I'm not going to do the bad thing, but I'm going to do the worst. Or I'm not going to do the worst, but I'm also going to do a bad thing anyway, It's like there's
I
no.
think they self themselves into believing that they're actually doing her a favor by having her working for free.
Oh my God, I don't know. It's delusional, honestly, delusional. And do we know a little bit about whether or not an increase of violence was recorded in the last 3, 4 years?
That's very difficult to measure. How do you measure whether a level of violence has changed? And
Yeah.
anyway, there's always been complete impunity when it comes to violence against domestic workers.
Yeah.
So when a worker dies trying to escape abuse, it's always classified as a suicide. And we've always maintained that we think the authorities should do a proper investigation, because at the moment they're just pro forma. So at minimum, they should ask 2 questions. 1, was she getting paid? And 2, was she in contact with her family? And
Yeah.
if either of the answers to those questions are no, then that's an immediate red flag. But they don't bother to ask those questions. We think a lot of the so-called suicides are actually murders. Like, we documented one case that had over 1 million views on Twitter, actually, of a woman that we knew. She was being sexually abused, and we were planning to help her escape. And she'd sent her pictures of the landmarks around the house and stuff like that. And we were still talking to her when she was found at the bottom of I think it was 12-story building, dead in the car park. And it was classified as a suicide, but we're 99.9% sure it wasn't suicide, because we were talking to her and planning her escape. Why would she have committed suicide when she knew help was on the way? It was murder.
It's very painful, honestly, to hear. I Yeah, the level of cruelty sometimes I really don't understand. I now
Just to be clear, this would happen in any country. It would happen in Canada as well,
yeah.
because people are people wherever, right? It's not that Lebanese are crueler than anyone else.
Accountability and justice, like that's the whole part, is that okay, it's happening, but it's happening a lot more and on such like a big, in an increased manner because there's no justice or no one's being accountable
Exactly.
or arrested for these things. So it's just so normalized. Like, how can this thing, like the kafala, like if I want to speak in millennial terms, the kafala system, the modern day slavery, is something that's become normalized and mainstream. Like
It's
how,
not even modern day slavery. I mean, we don't even use that term modern day slavery. It's just old fashioned slavery. It's slavery.
and it's mainstream.
That's
Like
it.
I just don't understand. It's I mean, you as an organization and working with, these very sensitive stories and with people who potentially have power in the government and in the country, have you been as an organization potentially like threatened or subjected to any abuse or verbal abuse because of the nature of the work that you're doing?
Oh, of course. It's that. I mean, every slaveholder brings a lawsuit against us in Lebanon. It's just that's just standard. And they always threaten us with a lawsuit. A woman that just arrived this morning in Nepal,
Yeah.
having been owed 9 years' salary, her employers threatened to bring a lawsuit against us. So yeah, that's how ridiculous it is. But we just tell them take a number and join the queue, because everyone's bringing a lawsuit against us.
Number.
And yeah. And our negotiators regularly get called every name under the sun. I used to do the negotiation myself, and at the start, I found it really disturbing, actually. I've had very powerful people tell me they're going to fine me, and, you fill in the gap of what they're going to do to me. I could play you recordings of their threats, and if I did, you would understand why I have nightmares. But that's the nature of the work.
I mean, also just to explain to our audience why, you are coming out anonymous and, this podcast happened, but you and I have had a lot of talks in the background of how this could go and how it should go because to keep your safety and to keep your anonymity, because this is so important. And I mean, thank you for doing this work. I mean, just to say, because I mean, this is something that really is brave and it's something that, you don't need to do. You really don't need to. And I guess is what you said, it takes a village to really put the word out there. So I'm pretty sure a lot of the people you're helping really appreciate your help and you being there for them, like I can't imagine, someone really reaching out for help on this hotline and then really having someone at the other end of that line be there and listen and believe what they're going through. This is the most important thing, is that you're believing them and you're not just like, completely, what do you say, like ignoring or belittling their issues as well. That's like very important for everyone, for anyone really seeking help.
I read a couple of comments that people wrote to us after we were able to help them. This person says, "Thank you for always giving hope to most of us who thought it was the end. God bless you. This is Lebanon. You've really given me a shoulder to lean on during this difficult time in my life." And then another one says, "You changed any pain I was going through into joy from the day I contacted you. I really needed you and God brought you. God bless you all." So yeah, that's why we do it, because it's very satisfying actually to be able to help them.
Saving lives. This is essentially what you're literally saving lives. I mean, that's I can't even think about another like more fulfilling thing you're able to do. It's amazing, really. So I want to kind of go back to a little bit of how you manage the operations and how you manage to sustain your operations as this is Lebanon for the last few years since 2017. How do you fund it? How do you work?
It's a constant battle, actually, but we are really fortunate in that we have a private donor who covers most of our operating expenses. So general donations that are given usually through our website can be used for air tickets and financial aid. So the donor only covers the cost of staffing and IT and stuff like that. But the general donations go directly to the workers. For example, Halima, who we talked about, we gave her $1,000, and Misirat also got $1,000. So we try to give some financial aid to each worker who goes home with more than 6 months unpaid salary. It's not a lot, but it does help. Yeah. And it's really important for the negotiating team to be able to offer to buy an air ticket for a worker. That can be the difference between getting her released or not. And so in providing air tickets, we've managed to get many women safely home and free from abusive situations. So most of our general donations come from the Lebanese diaspora, actually. And we are, I barely have the words, but we're so grateful for their partnership. There are so many wonderful, wonderful Lebanese out there, and we just couldn't do what we do without their generosity. So a big shout out to the Lebanese diaspora who are helping us.
I mean, if you're listening, a lot of our viewers are the Lebanese diaspora. This is, a very important cause. If you're listening, look at how much you can help. So please help. We will be sharing a lot of also your links of where people can donate and everything after this episode. So if you're listening, go for it.
We are such a shoestring organization. We're basically doing the work of the Ministry of Labour for under $100,000 a year. I don't even know if I'm supposed to share that figure, but I mean, we're talking about, we're running on a shoestring, and we're able to achieve so much. And I think if I was a donor, I would want to give to us, because none of the that money that is given is going to just overheads. It's directly helping the workers that we're dealing with.
That's amazing, honestly. Like, imagine if it's such a small budget, considering how much help you're able to also give. So can you just imagine if they're able to, like, the ministry can just give 0.5% more, or like whatever from their budget that they put on other stuff, or like just like the 0.5% of the money that they steal. Let's just like keep it as basic as that.
We don't want their money. We just want them to cooperate with us. Like, how great would it be if we could contact the Ministry of Labour and say, look, we've got this worker who's been enslaved for X number of months or years. Can you assist? Yeah. But we don't. There's no cooperation from them. Yeah. We're basically fighting the Lebanese government, right? When we want to work with them, we don't want to post. We don't want to post. No, we just want workers to receive their salaries and to go home peacefully. We're not after punitive damages for them. We don't. All we claim is the minimum salary that she worked for. Just pay her and send her home. That's all we want.
Yeah. So last question, and then we'll conclude. Is there anything you think you want to add to this conversation that we haven't added yet, you think?
No, I don't think so. I just want it to be clear to your listeners that we had this common accusation against us that we're blackmailers, but it's so not true, because, we go to great lengths to hear the employer's point of view. We don't ever touch the money of any domestic worker. We refuse to even act as a channel. We just want them to pay the worker her salary.
Yeah. So us as listeners and as viewers and allies to your cause, how do you think that we can fight alongside you to abolish kafala, and what can our viewers and listeners help or do to help?
You can follow us on all our social media platforms and comment as well. Abusers don't mind it if 100 domestic workers write a comment, but they're very sensitive to comments from fellow Lebanese. So comment on our posts, contact the employers. We always have their contact details on our website. Contact them and say that you saw the post, and just let you can Yeah, ask them to show them the receipts. Ask them to give them, go in as if you're a completely neutral person and just ask what's going on. So interact with the posts and contact the employers.
Yeah. I and also speak up if you see something. I just want to add this because a lot of people in Lebanon sometimes turn a blind eye to these things. They see some of the abuse happening in front of them between the employer and migrant worker. And sometimes, you can also speak up for other human beings. It's okay. It's your duty.
Yeah, I mean, when I was living in Lebanon, my neighbor rushed over to my apartment one day and said, "Quick, quick, come! There's a woman downstairs who's beating up her domestic worker." And I said, "Why don't you do something about it? Why don't you intervene?" Because it was on the footpath below. And that thought had never even occurred to her. It was just like, go and get the foreigner to do something. But Lebanese can do something, and at the very minimum, they can contact our page, and we will protect their anonymity, and we can do something. We just need them to reach out to us.
I guess also just to remind people that some of these migrant workers helped raise you. They were there, they asked about your day, they asked about your days at school, your bad days, if you're okay, whatever you need. They practically raised you. It's your
Yeah,
duty.
Sajita was sent home recently without 10 years' salary by Richard Khordi. And when I interviewed her, I said, do you want punishment for the employees? She said, no, I don't want punishment. I just want my salary. And she said, and I want to talk to their daughters, because she said, I miss them. I raised them.
I mean, essentially they're part of the family. So yeah, keep that in mind the next time you see someone needing your help, speak up. But on this note, thank you so much, This is Lebanon, for being with us today. I've learned so much. You shared a lot of your insights, a lot of the stories that people really need to hear and listen, so that they're well equipped with the tools to do something about, the Kafala system, and helping migrant workers get out of this, let's say, slavery system that we have in Lebanon and in the Arab world. So I really appreciate your time, and the fact that you also put yourself in a little bit of a situation here, risking your safety to talk about these things. So I really appreciate it. For our viewers and listeners, if you really like this episode, like, follow, and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.